I was watching Blood Boxing's video earlier today. We was talking about Al Heyman and the new deal with NBC to try to put more fights on NBC. And I think that's a good idea. I mean, Al Heyman seems to be a somewhat shady guy, man, but boxing needs some type of alternative exposure because um, and by the way, if you haven't watched Blood's video, please watch it. I'll put a link to that video in my description. Um, anyway, boxing is just dying as a sport. It's dying, man. Also, it's kind of, I'm kind of glad he did make that video because um, a lot of Flomos, man, they really don't have an idea. Like, I laugh when they keep bragging about Mayweather and the amount of money that he makes and his record, and in particular because of because of this video, they talk about his pay-per-view buys. Like, no other fighter in the history of the sport has approached those numbers. I'm like, you guys are fucking retarded. They have no idea that the legends of boxing absolutely dwarf his numbers. Sort of like how Warren Buffett dwarfs Floyd Mayweather's wealth. Just give you an example, right? Okay, the last official Floyd Mayweather pay-per-view numbers. They say that the last bout between Mayweather and Madonna, the rematch, did 950,000, but I don't see it up here. And I've never seen that verified. And I've heard rumors that it did something closer to 700, 800,000. All right, they claim it was 950,000, but the last official one I see is from May, the first fight, and that did 850,000 pay-per-view buys. All right, which is only a 50,000 more than Pacquiao Bradley too. All right, which was a month earlier than that. So Floyd Mayweather Madonna did 850,000 pay-per-view buys. All right. So I would assume if you look at the total number of people that probably watched that, there's something like 2.5 people per household or something like that. So let's say about 2 million people or so watched that bout. In this country right now, there are about 317 million people. You go back to Tyson and Spinks. That did 700,000 pay-per-view buys when the population of this country was about 248 million, or about 70 million fewer people in this country. All right, Tyson versus Ruddock. The first one did 957,000 pay-per-view buys over 20 years ago. The second one, the rematch, did 1.3 million pay-per-view buys. Even when you look at, now of course, I will admit that Floyd Mayweather is part of the two highest grossing pay-per-view buys. That being the one with Canelo Alvarez, which did 2.2 million, and the one with Oscar De La Hoya, which did 2.4 million But I like to also state that one of the reasons why Floyd did so well in those pay-per-view buys is because he fought against very popular Latino fighters. So it had just as much to do with who Floyd fought as opposed to who to his status. And Floyd gets mad because a woman, what was it? Some video where a Jamaican woman didn't know who he was. And he talks about how much money he makes and his pay-per-view buys or whatever. And apparently it's a pattern that whenever he runs into somebody who doesn't kiss his ass and worship the ground he walks on, he has a temper tantrum. And this guy just is not, I'm looking at prior fighters to him. Lennox Lewis, the Mike Tyson fight. And this was when Tyson was really pretty much washed up. That did almost 2 million buys. And this was 12 years ago. Alright? And, me and 78 was talking a couple of days ago, and we was mentioning how Tyson fought on Fox TV, the Fox network, some years ago. December 95, I think. And he fought a bum. An absolute bum, Buster Mathis Jr. Well, I don't want to say he was a complete bum, but he wasn't a guy who had really. I think Mathis was I can't remember now, but I think he might have been number 10 ranked or something like that. But anyway, Tyson beat him in 3 rounds. But that fight drew an audience of 43 million people. And at that time, it was the highest rated Fox program in its history. This is before Fox started having Super Bowls. So this tells you how popular Mike Tyson was. This is why Mike Tyson, unlike Floyd Mayweather, can go outside his country. He can go to Belgium. He can go to Ukraine and meet throngs of people who know him and cheer him. They know Mike Tyson. And, as popular as Mike Tyson is, Tyson's popularity is dwarfed in comparison to guys like Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali. All right, let's go to Joe Louis for a second. Now I'm just gonna, because it's a different era, and at that time it was, people watched or listened to fights because of radio. There wasn't really television around. But look at a guy like I remember reading about Tony Galeno, who Joe Louis fought in 1939. And the build-up to that fight was wonderful. Galento may not have been a classic fighter in a lot of sense, but he was really good at promoting that bout. And that bout reached an audience of 40 million people in 1939. And at this time, there was only about 130 million people in this country. All right. The first bout between Joe Louis and Billy Conn did a 56.2 rating. A 56.2 rating. Super Bowls don't do that well. I think the highest Super Bowl did a 49.2 rating. That's that number reflects the total number. Well, in today's world, the total number of actual television sets that are owned, that are in use, that are watching a program at that time. That's not just actual televisions that are on, but actual television sets that are actually in the country. And at that time, that meant that Joe Louis, Billy Conn, 56% of all actual radios that were in this country were tuned into that broadcast. Like I said, that's numbers that even Super Bowls don't do. When Joe Louis fought uh, Max Schmeling the second time, almost 70 million people in this country tuned in to listen to it on radio, and nearly 100 million people worldwide. Muhammad Ali, I mean, he was just in a class of his own when it came to. That's why Muhammad Ali, when people say it, and he got polls to prove that he is by far the most popular figure we've had in modern times. And I say modern time, I'm not talking about just sports. I mean, he is that popular. The only person I think that's probably more well known than Muhammad Ali worldwide is Jesus Christ. He's known throughout this country, the world. He's a total global figure. And I don't think a lot of guys, these young guys, these formos realize that. Muhammad Ali, I think his first bout with Sonny Liston, when he was still Cassius Clay, I think he drew an audience of 17 million. At that time, there was about, if I remember correctly, it was 191 million people in this country at the time. When he fought, I think the fighter's name was Richard Dunn in 1976. About 58.5 million people watched that particular fight in this country. When he fought Chuck Wepner, somewhere between 50 and 60 million people watched that fight. For a point of reference of how popular Muhammad Ali was, in 1979, Super Bowl 13 did a 47.4 rating, which meant about 74.7 million people tuned in. 74.2 million. At that time, our population was about 220 million. When Muhammad Ali fought Leon Spinks the second time, that fight did a 46.7, which meant that close to 74 million people watched that bout. He drew almost the same audience as the Super Bowl that year. And when Muhammad Ali fought Joe Frazier, 300 million people worldwide watched that fight. There was more people that watched that fight than listened to and watched the moon landing 2 years earlier. Muhammad Ali rose higher than the moon and the stars, both literally and figuratively. That's how popular this guy is. That's how beloved a figure he was. And when I see people constantly compare these two guys, the more agitated I become, because there's nothing that I can look at that compare these two. People can look at the amount of money they made, whatever, all right? That doesn't define a fighter. I'm pretty sure that Shaquille O'Neal has made more money. If I remember correctly, it was Shaquille O'Neal made $293 million over his career. I don't know how much money Kareem made over his career. Probably not even $40 million. But even Shaq himself will admit that he's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And, I made this video because I want you guys to ponder these numbers. And it shows you how far boxing has fallen. One more quick thing about Mike Tyson, too. People oftentimes forget, man, that for a period of time, I'd say between 1986, maybe 87, to about 1989, the guy was the most popular sports figure in America. Even more popular than Michael Jordan. People want to conveniently forget that, but it was true.